Yo, hey guys, it's me, Anchor64 again, with another video. This time I'm going to talk about actually Phase 5 stuff. So, yeah, we are in Phase 5 right now. AQ is not out yet, sadly, but that of course doesn't stop me to talk about Fury Warrior BiS and slot gear. So that's what I will do in this video. The smart folks at the Fight Club Discord and Wowhead as well made a pretty nice guide. They updated the guide on Wowhead actually to Phase 5. So we have pretty much the BiS and slot gear available to us in a guide format. And of course, the Fight Club Discord is pretty much very accurate on giving us like BiS and slot gear and so on. So my recommendation is always, if you want to read on some very nice information and so on, visit the Fight Club Discord, read like the old archived stuff and so on, and you can actually gain some pretty good knowledge. A lot of like warrior stuff is mentioned there, pretty much everything is on there. This guide was made by Beanna, pretty prominent figure from the Fight Club Discord, but yeah, that's pretty much all of that. Let's go into the actual guide. I'm going to use this one. I'm also going to link it in the comments, so if you want to read it for yourself, you can do that as well. But I thought maybe it makes more, it's also probably pretty nice to have something like an audio guide where I can also talk about a bit about gear, because I really love to talk about gear and loot and such. So yeah, I hope you like the music as well. It's kind of something different, but I'm always open to some music suggestions, which I can have on the background, which aren't that annoying. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's actually go get into the video. So, Phase 5 is pretty exciting. For once, actually, we are not going to use everything PvP related and actually have some upgrades. So yeah, we are not like so focused on PvP, which is a pretty nice refreshment. Especially, I can't imagine, I didn't rank through rank 14, so yeah, it's not really my stuff. But I can imagine if you did, it's probably pretty boring to do raids for like 1 or 2 items. But that isn't the case for AQ. As you can see here, we have a lot of new gear, and I will get into that. Yeah, we have 3 new setups pretty much. Not really new, but this one is in 3 setups. So we have the human BiS in slot, we have the Orc BiS in slot, and we have the Edgemasters BiS in slot for the races who aren't human or Orc, or for the lesser races if you want to be mean. But yeah, that's pretty much that. Let's go first of all over the human BiS in slot, and I will talk about some of the gear we have here. So yeah, again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. I'm always happy to answer them, and if you have anything else to say, feel free to comment. But yeah, for the human BiS in slot, let's go over every single piece. I will also mention some alternatives later, which are also mentioned on this guide. But yeah, first of all, we have the Lionheart helmet. Everyone should know probably, this one is the best in slot helmet. There are only really couple of minor situations where other helmets would be better. I also saw recently some stuff where people would mention, yeah, like Lionheart helmet isn't the best. I saw some videos and such, but yeah, this is pretty much wrong. Lionheart helmet is the best in slot helmet for warriors. So yeah, definitely try to get this one. You won't really replace it with anything. So it's not something new. Barb Choker is a new neck. However, it is pretty much only a slight upgrade compared to the Eye of Akar, which was our previous BiS in slot. It has 4 more attack power and 10 stamina. Additional 10 stamina. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Nothing more. But yeah, what can you do? Conqueror spoilers are new. They are the tier 2.5 plate shoulders we can get by turning in a token, and they are very similar, which you will also see in a bit, to our PvP rank 13 shoulders. So if you have them instead, maybe try to go for something else instead of these shoulders. So yeah, because these are very similar. They have 20 strength, 16 agility, 21 stamina, 4 defense and 1% hit. I think... Actually don't know. I think the rank 13 ones have more agility but less strength, if I'm correct. But we will see that in a bit when I talk about alternatives. But yeah, that's pretty much that. Next one we have the cloak. We have a new cloak which you can get by turning in the Kafun quest item. So again, the last boss of the raid, which is like a classic thing, gives us a guaranteed quest item which we can use and get some item. Similar to the head of Onyxia, similar to the head of Nefarian. Same story here, but this time we can choose a cloak. However, there are some things about the cloak I want to mention, which I will mention a bit later as well. Yeah, this one isn't like the thing you should really chase for. One thing you should definitely chase for, however, is this new enchantment we have. We have subtlety. We had the free agility enchantment for a very long time. However, we got a new one, which is pretty much way better. This one decreases the threat cost by us by 2%. So we cost 2% less threat, which you could say, okay, this is actually big. Yeah, it is way better because free agility is pretty much almost nothing. Like it is a bit something, but not really. 2% threat is just way more useful, especially as warriors, because we don't have any threat reduction things built in. We don't have vanish, we don't have feint. Yeah, we don't have what is it? What is the hunter one called again? Yeah, whatever this is called. I don't play a hunter. Yeah, that's pretty much that. So we don't have that. So this one can actually give us a benefit. However, this one will be pretty rare at the start because it drops in AQ. Yeah, drops from AQ from one boss. This guy from the twin M's. So yeah, you won't see this at the start. And you will probably pay a premium to get it. However, it will become it's a pretty nice enchantment. Next one we have the breastplate of annihilation. Annihilation, yeah. This one actually replaces finally the SGC, which is pretty ugly in my opinion, which we were using for a very long time. And also this one is also a proper plate item, so yeah, no more mail. What this one has, why are we using it? It has 37 strength, 13 stamina, 1% crit, 1% hit. So it is perfectly itemized for DPS warriors and maybe red paladins, but we'll ignore red paladins for now. Yeah, so pretty much perfectly itemized for us DPS warriors. We will have some other chest alternatives as well. However, this one is pretty much tailor-made for DPS warriors, so they should always go to DPS warriors first. Because of the low amount of stamina this one has compared to the other chests. So yeah, tanks don't really, unless they want to chase the high threat, should go for this. Yeah, really nice. Also drops from one of the earliest bosses. We can look at it. I think it drops from Scarab. Yeah, pretty much the first boss in AQ. So as you can see also here. So yeah, I would say the majority of people have a chance to get that one. Next one you have the bracers. Hive Defiler wrist guards. This is a pretty big upgrade actually compared to the last ones we used. We had some very strange wrists. We had to use either Warsong Gulch ones, which were pretty annoying, or we had to yeah, use some leather ones or whatever. But yeah, this one is actually a proper new upgrade we can use, and these are very, very good. They have 2 offensive stats, which is pretty rare actually. That's why they're also that strong. Next one is another very, very strong item, and that is the Gauntlets of Annihilation. Annihilation. Yeah, Annihilation. This item is just insane. This is another item which is that strong, you won't really replace it until TBC. So yeah, if you get it, feel yourself lucky. You won't ever touch your hand slot ever again, because these are just insanely strong. They have 35 strength, 15 stamina, 1% crit, 1% hit. The amount of strength these ones give compared to the last ones we used, I think it's 16 more strength with some additional stamina as well. which is just insane. Another thing which is also new, so a new enchantment we can use on these is Superior Agility, which is 15 agility, again, drops in AQ, so yeah, not everyone will have this at the start, but if you get lucky, if you gets lucky, yeah, you will use this instead. There are a lot of new enchantments which use Nexus Crystals. If you don't know what Nexus Crystals are, when you disenchant in phase 5, when you disenchant epics, you will get Nexus Crystals, and you can use it for some new enchants. These will be very expensive at the start, but yeah, no Vendor Strike has actually some purpose. So yeah. Next one we have Onslaught Girdle or Belt Slot, same stuff. I won't really talk much about this. There's just no replacement for this. Conqueror leg guards are new legs we can use. Again, very similar to the PvP rank 12 ones. Yeah, 33 strength, 21 agility, 24 stamina, 6 defense, 1% hit. So yeah, a lot of stats. Very, very good stats, 1% hit. Again, if you know how the rank 12 ones look like, they look very similar. However, these ones have a bit higher stats. Like the stats are a bit higher, similar to the Conqueror Spoilers as well. But if you did the rank 14 grind, I would recommend not going for either the Conqueror leg guards or the Spoilers, because it's a very minor upgrade. Next one we have Chromatic Boots. Yeah, what can you say about Chromatic Boots? If you get them, if you got them in Blackwing Lair, consider yourself lucky. Right now we got actually kind of a pretty nice bonus from Blizzard. Blackwing Lair resets pretty much every day for like until Sunday, which is pretty much now. It's pretty late right now, kind of late. So yeah, I personally did like Blackwing Lair on reset. I got some very, very recently, one of the daily reset Blackwing Lairs, so I'm pretty happy about it. So yeah, if you get them, you're pretty much done. You don't need any other boots anymore. Same with Quick Strike Ring actually. So yeah, Quick Strike Ring drops an MC, nothing much to be said about. Very, very strong ring. Yeah, in MC they didn't really know how they should balance the gear, so you have things like Vendor Strike and you have things like this. For the other ring, however, we use the Circle of Applied Force. Drops in Blackwing Lair. Talked about this in another video. Because we are on human, we are on alliance. Kings, we can use kings as well as the Zandala world buff. These two combined pretty much make it so this ring is pretty much better than a new ring we can get in AQ. Trinket's actually a new trinket we can use, Jom Gabar. So probably a lot of you also know this trinket. This trinket is very, very strong in short fights. So if you have very short fights, it's the best trinket we can use. You can see it only lasts 20 seconds. So in a time span of 30 to 35 seconds, it is the best trinket and better than Diamond Flask, actually. After that, longer fights than that, Diamond Flask is actually better than this one. However, I would recommend, it's always very good to have two unused trinkets you can use. Like Diamond Flask and, for example, Jom Gabar, or another trinket which is like Earth Strike. But yeah. So you can actually use another trinket while Diamond Flask is on cooldown. Drakefang Talisman. Yeah, pretty much another thing which replaces Hands of Justice. Very close to it, however, still if you got it, consider yourself lucky. It's a very highly contested item. For swords, we use Grand Marshal Longsword and Grand Marshal Swiftblade, so the rank 14 weapons. Yeah, there's nothing really much to be said about it. They are still very, very strong. And AQ doesn't really change that. For the ranged weapon slot, we use the Library of the Great Worm. This one is a new ranged weapon, which gives us 1% crit and 18 attack power, which is similar to Striker's Mark, but instead of hit, it gives us 1% crit instead. So yeah, that's pretty much it. For Orc, let's go over to Orc. Very similar gear, however. First of all, one of the rings we are going to change is instead of using the Circle of Applied Force, we are using the Ring of the Kiraji Fury. Why is that the case? On Orc, because we are Horde, we don't have kings, so this ring is actually a bit better than that. So yeah, Ring of the Kiraji Fury gives us 12 stamina, 40 attack power, 1% crit. We can get that by killing with Sidious. So yeah, that's from that boss. Other than that, of course, we are also using other weapons. We are using the High Warlord's Cleaver, so the rank 14X. And for our offhand, we are using Cruel Shurok, Edge of Chaos. Damn, that's a mouthful of a name. You get this X by killing Nefarian. Yeah, and of course you need to be lucky to drop it. On Alliance, you don't really use this unless you have Edgemasters. But yeah. So yeah, you maybe think, okay, why don't we use High Warlord's Cleaver 2 times, which we could also do, which was also I think the phase 5 best in slot. But yeah, no, we changed that in using that instead. It's a bit smoother. The thing is, the problem is also if we use 2 weapons with the same speed, that can be pretty annoying actually, because you need to desync your weapons. But yeah, that's like another problem entirely. Now we have another set, which is the Edgemasters best in slot. So what do Edgemasters users use? We can use Blessed Kiraji War Axe instead, and the Blessed Kiraji Pugio. Both weapons are easier to get than like other things. For example, you don't really need to grind PvP or something. You can turn in Imperial Kiraji armaments, which drop in AQ. And if you turn them in and some Elementium ore, you can choose a weapon. And yeah, that's pretty much where you can get the axe and the dagger as well. So these are some tokens you can get. Most of the stuff is like pretty bad, but still you can easily get these weapons from there. So yeah, pretty easy actually to get. Now let's talk about some other stuff. Let's talk about some alternatives instead. So yeah, I think that's always pretty chill. Talking about some gear, some alternatives. So first of all, we have our helmet. So we have the Lionheart helmet, which is our trusted helmet we pretty much use until TVC. However, for some situations it maybe makes sense to use something with a bit more stamina, so we don't get one shot and use all of our buffs, which is also mentioned on here. So for things like maybe Trash, where you are kind of scared to pick up some threat and maybe get unlucky with some crits, you can use some other helmets. We have the Helm of Endless Rage, which is a really nice stat stick helmet, and we have Conqueror's Crown. However, don't go for these helmets when your tanks need them. So these helmets, both of them should go to your tanks first. The Conqueror's Crown token as well as the Helm of Endless Rage should both go to your tanks first. Why is that the case? Tanks, of course, need that mitigation, they need that stamina, and using it on DPS warrior, which just wants to use it so they don't die as often, yeah, it's pretty wasted. Just go for Lionheart helmet. Forget what other people are saying, other helmets are better, they are lying. Like, no, Lionheart helmet is the best helmet in the game for DPS warriors. There's like nothing else as in comparison. But yeah, only go for these items when no one else really wants it. For our neck, yeah, Barb Choker, I talked about this, slight upgrade. You can see the Eye of Hakar again here. You can see, okay, it has no stamina, it has 1% crit, 40 attack power. The new one, Barb Choker, has 10 stamina, 1% crit, 44 attack power. Yeah, slight upgrade. Again, also the Onyxia Tooth Pendant, don't forget it. Still a very viable and good choice, especially if you need to hit. And yeah, maybe you need some fire resistance also. It's still a very good neck. A new neck that drops from AQ20 is this one, Fury of the Forgotten Swarm, which you can also pick up. 8 strength, 1% crit, 1% hit. So it's a slightly worse version than the Onyxia Tooth Pendant one. Yeah, because like it has no stamina and so on. But yeah, it has pretty much similar stats. So pick this one up if you need the hit, and if you don't have Onyxia's Tooth Pendant. Shoulders. Shoulders are very interesting. Again, like I said, Conqueror's Boulders are your best in slot, so tier 2.5. You need neutral reputation with the Brood of Nosdormu to actually exchange the token with them, which can be kind of annoying, but yeah. Still, these are the best DPS shoulders for the rest of the game. So if you get them, you are pretty much set. Why is that the case? The stats are just that good. We have some alternatives, however, we can talk about. So let's do that instead. We have a new, as well as new shoulders, which are these ones. Mantle of the Rigged Revenge, which also look kind of cool, to be honest. Maybe look a bit weird on a warrior, however. These ones give us 16 strength, 30 agility, and 14 stamina, and they are leather. So, can be a bit tricky to get. They have like less survivability as the Conqueror's Boulders. But yeah, I would recommend if you are in a guild, if you have DPS warriors who also deserve it, like that's very important. Don't give like your like people, like your DPS warriors, items just because they need it, but they don't really deserve it as much. So yeah, that's another story, but whatever. So for example, let's say you have DPS warriors who didn't do their rank 12, rank 13 grind, rank 14 grind. But yeah, they are still very good players. You can give them the Conqueror's Boulders, they will pretty much be set until the rest of the game. Right now, for example, we can just compare them. Field Marshal's Blade Shoulder Guards were the ones we would use right now. You can see like all of the warriors with these ones. They have 18 strength, 16 agility, 23 stamina, 1% hit. Compared to the Conqueror's Boulders, they have 2 less strength, the same amount of agility, but 2 more stamina. So yeah. Again, as I said, it's a slight upgrade, a minimal one. So if you already have the rank 13 shoulders, don't go for the Conqueror's Boulders. It's pretty much a waste. Go for other stuff. As well, if you are in a guild and you rank 13 warrior, I don't know, really wants these shoulders, but you have another warrior, yeah, and he doesn't have like rank 13 shoulders, it makes more sense to give the other guy the token instead. But yeah, that's pretty much the case. For example, for me personally, I'm using a rank 10 shoulders. For me personally, it would be a huge upgrade, just compared to these ones. And you can see like the stats are way better. I get just additional amount of agility. But if you have already someone who has like the rank 13 shoulders, it is like slight upgrade. That's always why what I am saying. You need to be kind of smart how you allocate your gear in the guilds you are playing on, and as well as if you are a DPS player, same thing for you. So for example, if you are a DPS player and you grind it all the way through rank 14, and you maybe are saying, okay, the other players don't deserve it because they didn't do the same grind as me, still be smart, because you are wasting your DKP, your SR or something on an item which is a small tiny amount of upgrade, which you could rather use instead of getting something else instead. And maybe make another warrior or something in your guild happier, because they have shittier shoulders than you. But yeah, that's pretty much that. Back. So yeah, let's talk about cloaks, which is another topic which is bit difficult actually. So the best one is the Cloak of the Fallen God. I talked about it. It is you get it from the Kofun, from the Eye of Kofun, which is a quest item which drops guaranteed from Kofun. You can turn it in. However, it is not the same story as before, where the head of Onyxia and the head of Nefarian, which was pretty much like melee prio. So for example, Varus enjoyed the priority on these items because the other items pretty much sucked. For example, you can just look at the head of Onyxia and look at the other items. Oh come on. Let me see the items. Yeah. Yeah, we can see, okay, tanks would, like, this is a tanking one. This is like a caster one, doesn't even have spell power, so it's pretty shit. So yeah, obvious choice, of course, to give it to me instead. But yeah, Nefarian, same story. However, this time, let's actually look at this, what you can get. It's not the same thing. So we have a healing necklace, which is actually pretty good. So 57 healing, 6 mana per 5, 11 stamina. And we have a caster ring, 6 intellect, 5 stamina, 37 spell damage, 1% hit. So it's actually very, very good. I think especially the caster ring, if I remember right. I'm not really playing a caster, but I would think it's very good. Probably even BiS. So now you have some competition. The thing is, this cloak is only like a 2 till 3 DPS upgrade over the cloak of the Draconic Might, which was our previous best in slot, which dropped in Blackwing Lair. So if you have that already, don't go for Cafoon's Eye, especially because it can be a bit dicey to even clear it, maybe. Really depends on your guild. But yeah, that would be my recommendation. Again, you can also see we have a new enchantment, but I talked about that already. If you don't have that, however, yeah, we have some other stuff as well, some other cloaks. Some new ones, let me think about it. Yeah, we have this cloak, which drops an AQ 20, which is actually really strong. 15 strength, 9 agility, 9 stamina, 1% hit. Of course, it has less stats than the cloak of Draconic Might, and the 1% hit is kind of wasted if you already have a lot of hit. But if you don't, this is actually pretty insane. We have another cloak, which is this one. Cloak for Concentrated Hatred, which drops an AQ from the first boss. 11 strength, 16 agility, 15 stamina, 1% hit. Again, another very good cloak, but Cloak of Draconic Might is better, just because of the amount of stats, especially if you play Alliance. So yeah. Chest again, interesting slot. We are replacing SGC, so Savage Gladiator Chain. It's not the king anymore. There's a new king, Breastplate of Annihilation. Because yeah, stats are just that insane. So this one again drops from the first boss. So if you kill the first boss, like at least kill the first boss, you will have some really nice items from that one. So definitely want to do that. I talked about this already. Alternatively, you can also get this Conqueror Breastplate. This one, however, is the token one, of course, and will be more contested than this one. Yeah, every DPS warrior will pretty much go for this chest, like no doubt about it. However, the token one, you will also need to kinda be against also rogues, which also kinda want to have the tier set, and of course tank warriors as well, and of course paladins. But yeah, paladins, however, if you don't really know, they want to have the full set. So as well as shamans, they also, I think, want to have the full set. So there are only a couple of classes that actually want the tier 2.5 set. For example, for DPS warriors, you only want to have like 1 or 2 pieces. The rest is don't really care about it. For other classes, they don't really care about it at all. For example, hunters, they have a really shit set, so kind of unlucky. Other than that, yeah, nothing much you can say about it. I would either recommend giving this one to your tanks first, and yeah, using other chests instead. This is another chest we can use. It's also very good, strong. This one, however, is leather. It has 21 strength, 41 agility, 20 stamina, Vest of the Swift Execution. Pretty big amount of stats. However, it's leather, so you will have less armor. Yeah. Maybe you will need to contest with other classes with that as well, because it's leather. But I would highly recommend always going for this one instead. Next one, we have the bracers. So we have the Hive Defiler wrist guards. As I said previously, they are a significant upgrade over all the bracers available in Phase 5 and almost equal to Naxx bracers. I think this one is the one which is pretty much mentioned. Yeah. You can see like the stats, really insane. So yeah, they are pretty equal. However, of course, the next runner's braces have some stamina, these ones don't. Yeah, that's also the case where they are so strong. They have 2 offensive stats, no stamina. And of course, that is very good for DPS. Alternatively, you could also go for these ones, Kiraji Execution Bracers, or the Bracers of Brutality. The Kiraji Execution Bracers, they're level, so there might be some overlap with other classes, rogues. I actually don't know what what rogues would be using as bracers. I think they're probably using the tier ones, so yeah. Maybe it could be another thing you could choose. However, these ones are pretty much the best. You should definitely try to get them, and they are also the best ones for, of course, DPS warriors. We have, however, some alternatives. Bracers of Brutality drop in AQ 20. So if you can get them instead, also really nice. And we have some other bracers, Deep Rock bracers, which you can get. Which you need to turn them some stuff in, and you can get these instead. Which is, I think, you need to be revered with the Cenarian Circle. Remember right. Yes, revered with the Cenarian Circle. So yeah, that's when you can get that. The bracer slot was always weird because the best ones were the Berserker bracers, which required Exalted with the Warsong Gulch. And the next ones, like we had some really strange ones, like these ones, 24 strength, 80 stamina, lever from MC, and we had like, yeah, the bracer slot was very, very weird, but now we got a proper upgrade, and these ones are very, very strong. Good, we have that. Let's go over the hands. Again, as I said, this one's pretty much one of the biggest big ticket items. It is a 30% upgrade over the previous best in slot, Sacrificial Gauntlets. Why is that the case? We can compare them. Sacrificial Gauntlets, which was our previous best in slot, dropped from ZG. 19 strength, 1% crit, 1% hit. Gauntlets of Annihilation, the new ones, 35 strength, 15 stamina, 1% hit, 1% crit. So the 1% crit and hit is the same, however we get 17 more strength and of course also some stamina, which is also very important. Yeah, if you get them, you are set until TBC. Pretty much. So yeah, they are very, very strong. Some alternatives, if you aren't playing human or orc, you go for Edgemasters, of course. You can't replace the Edgemasters with these. It doesn't work if you aren't human or orc. That's pretty much because weapon skill is that important. Another alternative is these ones, Gloves of Enforcement. Leather hands, 28 strength, 20 agility, 6 stamina. However, they are highly contested by leather bearers in this phase. And yeah, so I would always try to go for the Gauntlets of Annihilation. Don't try to maybe screw over your leather bearers by going for these instead, even though, of course, the gauntlets are from Kofun, which can be a bit dicey with some pucks and so on. Yeah. But if you are in a guild, don't try to screw over your level. You just go for Gauntlets of Annihilation first. Yeah, belt, also girdle is pretty much the same. Again, it's best in slot until next Rammers. Anchorage, however, has 2 new belts. So the second best belt we could get would be the Belt of Never Ending Agony, which drops from Kofun, which is, yeah, a pretty strong belt. 20 stamina, 64 attack power, sorry, 1% crit, 1% hit. So very similar to Onslaught Girdle. However, yeah, Onslaught Girdle is still better. It has just pure strength, which is pretty much better than having just attack power, especially because of like Kings and Zendala Ward buff and so on. And of course, also Girdle is plate. This one is leather. So this one is 10% worse than Onslaught Girdle. The previous one, which we had, was Zendala Vindicator's Belt, which was the second best one, was 25% worse. So yeah. Next one which you could get is the Triad Girdle, which has a lot of very good stats. And would be another thing we could pick up instead of going for this one. If you can't get on-stock girdle. Because like the stats roughly translate to 1% crit and the amount of strength anyway. But we don't have the hit. So yeah, that is kinda unfortunate. But still, this is played. This isn't very contested by other people. You can easily go for this one instead. AQ really has a lot of gear and as well as a lot of alternatives we can get. This is very helpful for people who didn't get the best of the best items. Yeah, for example, like on-stock girdle. If you didn't get it, you can grab Tried girdle. This one, I wouldn't really go for. This should be going to your level, reverse, whatever you want to call it in English, first, pretty much. So yeah. Legs. So, interesting point that is mentioned here. Phase 5 suddenly drops half a dozen leg upgrades for warriors after 4 phases without any option besides PvP rank gear. Which was pretty much true. So we have a lot of different leg pieces we can actually go for. The best ones are the Conqueror leg guards. Why is that the case? We can compare it again to the PvP ones. Conqueror leg guards, 33 strength, 21 agility, 24 stamina, 6 defense, 1% hit. As I said, very similar to the, for example, martial gear, the rank 12 gear. For example, let's compare it. This one has 20 strength, 28 stamina, 2% crit, 1 hit. But yeah, pretty similar. This one, however, has way more strength. And of course, there's also the agility with it. Packs a punch, however, this one has just base 2% crit. So this one has no crit at all. Still, the Conqueror leg guards are better. However, you need to be friendly actually with the Brute of Nostromo, which is a bit harder, of course, to get. Which can be annoying. As well, this one is another token. So, also, of course, contested. Another thing which is really interesting, which we can also get, is the Titanic leggings. These are more DPS orientated. These are pretty much for people who have a lot of gold. So this is a piece which can be crafted by blacksmiths. We can just look at this. We need 12 Arcanite bars, a lot of enchanted thorium bars, 10 Essence of Earths, and 2 Flasks of the Tines. So this one is this one alone is like over 200 gold easily. And yeah, this receipt also, you can really get it easily. It's also another thing. I need to find the receipt. Yeah, plans. Again, as you can see here, this has a very low drop chance from like world bosses or like from the Nefarian as well. But yeah, it's very rare, and that's the thing you need to consider. However, what do these legs have? 30 strength, 2% crit, 2% hit, 1% crit. So yeah, very, very, very good stats. If you have a lot of gold, you can pretty much buy these, but I think they will be very expensive at the start. Especially because no one will have the receipt. But yeah, again, also you can compare them to this instead. Hard choice to make, to be honest, with the legs. We have also, however, other leg choices we can look at. These ones are a bit harder, of course, to get. We have some easier things as well. We have these legs as well. Scaled Sand Reaver leggings, 23 stamina, 10 intellect, 62 attack power, 2% crit. Yeah, very, very nice legs. They are male, however, and I actually don't know if hunters are going to use them, if they are their best in slot. So, could be maybe in considerations you can look at. Yeah, other than that, we can also pick up in AQ20 these legs, 20 strength, 13 stamina, 2% crit. Very similar to the Naxx rank 8 legs, but of course they have a lot more strength, like 8 strength more, which is a way bigger upgrade. We also have these, can also look at that, which are from World Boss, and we have the Abyssal plate leg plates, which you can pretty much pick up from on the auction house right now even. But yeah, That's pretty much for the legs. Boots are not that interesting. You have chromatic boots, that's pretty much it. We have other boots, however we have new ones and also 10 new chromatic boots. The boots of the Fallen Hero are a pretty good substitute if you don't have the chromatic boots. They have 10% less stats. And of course the rank 12 boots have 20% less stats. But yeah, we also have some new boots we can also talk about. So one thing that's also very interesting, we have the boots of the Vanguard. So if you don't care about the hit and have Blessing of Kings, they are actually performing similar to the chromatic boots. So let's just look at the boots now in detail a bit. Chromatic boots, I talked about that. Boots of the Vanguards, 22 strength, 22 agility, 11 stamina, leather. Now you can see why they are very good with kings. They are pretty nice, they have a pretty nice amount of stats. However, they are leather, which is not that good. Especially, you need to consider one thing. Things like stamina and being tankier, using plate gear, having more armor becomes more important than AQ. It's not the same thing as Blackwing Lair, where, yeah, now we have actually some difficulty, like a step up in difficulty, and being more tankier, having more survivability actually becomes more important. So that's also one thing I want to mention. Of course, this is also highly dependent on your guild and such, but yeah. Boots of the Fallen Hero, I talked about them. They have 20 strength, 14 agility, 22 stamina, 1% hit. We can compare them to the chromatic boots. They are very similar. So they have the same amount of strength. They have 6 less agility, but they have 3 more stamina. So yeah. However, we only care about the agility. So that's like worse. However, they are still, yeah, if you don't have chromatic boots, they're still very good. And then we have the rank 12, pretty much boots, and everything below that is a bit worse. We have slime kickers, which are new, which you can get in AQ 20. Like blue boots, 18 strength, 12 agility, 12 stamina. Actually very nice. I think this would be like a cutoff, pretty much. So you can easily get these instead. If you can't pick up any of the above ones, you should definitely go for this. Conqueror Greaves, you can get that in Anchorage from the token, but yeah, I would go for other boots instead. So rings are very interesting. Quick Strike ring is, again, like I also mentioned previously, pretty much your best ring you can get in the game for the whole game until like next Ramos. Yeah, it is just that insane. It is pretty much followed closely compared to the Ring of Kiraji Fury and the Circle of Applied Force. But yeah, Quick Strike ring is like on another level. Why is that so strong? We can just look at it just for some comparison. We have 5 strength, 8 stamina, 1% crit, and now you would maybe say, okay, that's like enough. That's already a pretty good ring. However, it also has some additional 30 attack power for some reason, because why not? So yeah, you can really see in Mountain Core they didn't really have a plan. They didn't really have a plan to balance like the gear, which is a thing that is also kind of cool, to be honest. I kind of like it. It's pretty unique about vanilla. But yeah, this ring has strength and additional attack power, which is very rare to see, to be honest. But yeah, it has like that, and that's why this ring is so strong. So if you have it, you can use it until next. Ring of Kiraji Fury, I talked about this, very good ring. Circle of Applied Force is pretty much better than Ring of Kiraji Fury if you can use it with Kings and Spirit of Zandala. So yeah, but all of these rings are pretty similar to each other. So yeah. Other than that, for the other rings are pretty much worse. So they have like 10% worse stats in the Quick Strike ring. So yeah, they're very similar, however, in that case. So we have the Nefarian head ring, Don Julio's band. One new ring is this one, which you can get by being honored with the Cenarian Circle, which isn't that hard to do, to be honest. 6 strength, a band of Urban Might, 6 strength, 1% crit, 1% hit. Pretty nice ring to get. So if you are kind of struggling with a ring slot, you can easily get this. This is actually a very nice ring. But yeah, you can also get this ring, 1% crit, 11 strength, 14 stamina, from AQ 20. And yeah, if you are exalted with Boot of Nosdormu, you can, if you're maybe a Scarab Lord, you can also get this ring, but you will probably have better rings. Trinkets. So trinkets is one, of course, one very interesting thing. We have 2 new trinkets. Actually, we have 3 new trinkets. So let's talk about them. First of all, we have Jomgabar. So Jomgabar is our best in slot trinket. However, for fights that are under 30 to 35 seconds. That's where Jomgabar and Earthstrike are both superior to Diamond Flask. Why is that the case? We can just look at it. Diamond Flask lasts 1 minute. It gives us 75 strength, which like roughly equals to 150 attack power, actually a bit more, but whatever. However, like Earthstrike, for example, gives us raw 280 attack power, and Jomgabar gives us 65, but it stacks. So every 2 seconds we actually get some additional 65 attack power. So we will have a lot of attack power at the end of the duration. However, both of these only last 20 seconds, Diamond Flask lasts 1 minute. So now you can see why in short encounters, of course, these trinkets will pretty much trump over Diamond Flask. But yeah, really depends on your kill timers and so on. Yeah, however, it is pretty useful to have like another trinket which you can use when Diamond Flask is on cooldown. Jomgabar drops from Uro and Anchorage, so it's pretty late in Anchorage. Earthstrike you can get by being exalted with the Cenarian Circle, so this is a pretty big grind. Can be pretty annoying, but it is pretty much guaranteed if you do it. So yeah, that's that. The third trinket I want to talk about, actually we have 4 trinkets, but 3 are pretty much like the main topic, is a Badge of the Swarm Guard. You will see people go for this trinket a lot. It is actually good and bad. Like there are some different things you need to think about. Let's say you are going to 100% play your warrior in TBC, then you should 100% definitely go for this trinket. It is very strong in TBC. I will get into why it is so strong in TBC. Other than that, if you only care about classic, don't go for this trinket, go for other trinkets. So yeah, go for Jomgabar or something else. So yeah, let's look at what this trinket even does. Badge of the Swarm Guard. Use gives a chance on melee and range attack to apply an armor penetration effect on you for 30 seconds, lowering the target's physical armor by 200 to your own attacks. The armor penetration effect can be applied to 6 times. So the thing is about this trinket, it is a very egoistical trinket, to be honest. So instead of lowering the like armor of the enemy, it only lowers it to your own attacks. So how it works, basically you use this trinket and you will have an armor penetration effect on yourself. However, it is only for your own attacks. And of course that only lasts like 30 seconds, but still. So yeah. The thing is, however, in Classic, actually I can switch over and show you this one. So this is a simulation, and we can actually look at the armor right here. When we are using the normal debuffs, so Thunder and the 2 Warlock debuffs, the enemy's armor, this is also for the highest amount of armor the enemies can actually have. So for warrior bosses is 336. If we use improved exposed armor, this even goes lower to 36. And same story if we would use an Annihilator, that one-handed axe, which can reduce some armor of the enemy. So the thing is, we can get very close to 0 armor. That's pretty much the point I want to make. That's why Badge of the Swarm Guards pretty much useless. So because in the armor is already that low, you won't get really any use of this trinket. However, there's one case that can be very useful is on cleave fights. So for example, for the first boss in AQ, where you have Scarab, which can pretty much split into 3, That's where this trinket can become very useful, and you will see it used by speedrunners and such, because you can't really thunder every enemy that fast, especially if you're trying to speedrun. So yeah, you can just use the trinket instead, and you will have the same effect. That's one thing. So why is trinket so good in TBC? That's like another thing. In TBC, armor is heavily increased, and we will have like we won't have that much access to armor penetration, especially at the start. This will become a thing later, but not at the start. So that's why Badge of the Swarm God becomes way more valuable actually, because it actually, like, the armor reduction is actually meaningful by then, because armor is very high in TBC. I think it gets doubled if I remember right. I think it goes to like 7k or something. I think Eladin had like, I think 7 or 10k armor or something. But yeah, yeah, crazy. But that's why this trinket is so good in TBC. Another trinket which exists is the Fetish of the Sand Reaver. This is more of a niche trinket. What it does, it reduces the threat you generate by 70% for 20 seconds. So yeah, it really depends on your guild. If you are maybe playing on a guild which has like threat problems, or maybe you are fighting a boss which is resets threat, or it can become dangerous and you really want to blast, but you always need to hold yourself back so you don't pull threat, you can pretty much use this trinket and go all out, which is also mentioned here. So yeah, this is like another trinket. However, yeah, as I said, it's pretty much a niche trinket. This won't increase your DPS, more just makes things more safe, I would say. Probably more useful for Horde than actually for Alliance. Now we talked about like the gear, we went pretty much through that. Now we are actually at the weapons. So on weapons, same story as always. Humans use swords and maces, orcs use axes. We really want to benefit from that, from our ratio. So that's that. All other races pretty much use Edgemasters and then pretty much leftover weapons. So why is that the case? I will get into that, why that should be pretty much the case for other races, but yeah. First of all, on humans, for our main head weapons, we have Imperial Demolisher. So now I would say, okay, Imperial Demolisher, that, what is that weapon? That weapon drops from a world boss. Actually, recently I got the opportunity to actually even kill Kazakh. So yeah, I got pretty, yeah, I was kind of stoked to do that, because I never killed Kazakh. And of course he didn't drop the mace, because why would he? I don't think I would have won it anyway, but still. He can drop this mace, and this mace is insanely strong. First of all, okay, it does decent damage. However, the proc is what it really makes. 20% attack speed for 10 seconds on a proc is just broken. Especially for Fury Warriors, this will mean we will hit way more for normal white hits. We will be able to hit way more heroic strikes, or regeneration will be way higher, way more increased. And yeah, just a lot goes into this weapon. It's just really insane. Especially for humans, if you get this weapon as a human, GG, you will have the best weapon pretty much. That's pretty much it. I only saw a couple of people with this weapon, however, it's very rare, but that's also why it isn't mentioned on the top, which is why you didn't see it, because yeah, it's not really realistic to get. Again, more realistic is, but also very annoying to get, rank 14 weapon, Grand Marshal's Longsword. Very good weapon. Very slow, but huge amount of damage, pretty much. Yeah, it is a very good weapon, Grand Marshal's Longsword. 1% crit, 28 attack power, 7 stamina. Yeah, pretty much the best in slot sword. If you don't use Grand Marshal's Longsword, if you didn't do rank 14, now you would think, okay, now the next best weapon would be probably an AQ weapon. But no, actually this chromatically tempered sword, for humans at least. There is a sword in AQ, which is the Ancient Karaji Ripper, but it is worse than chromatically tempered sword, which is kind of weird, but that's how it is pretty much. Yeah. That's kind of weird, but I will show you some simulations which also pretty much show you that as well. Why is that the case? Why is chromatically tempered swords that good? First of all, we can look at the damage. It is, I would say, in the mid-range, or like a bit of a slower weapon, and it's pretty good. It has a good amount of damage. It has 14 strength, 14 agility, which is pretty much the thing which, yeah, enables this weapon to be very good, especially on Alliance, because of course humans, we are on Alliance. We can benefit from Kings, we can benefit from the Thunderlord buff, which can everyone benefits, but both of these, yeah, they give us that, and then we will have, yeah, huge advantage. Ancient Kuraji Ripper in comparison, of course, does more damage. It is a slower weapon. It has 1% crit and 20 attack power. But again, as I mentioned, the 20 attack power already gets overshadowed by the strength. The strength alone is already like 28 attack power without calculating things like kings and such into that. So yeah, that's already beaten by that. And that's the thing. So yeah, chromatically tempered sword is better than Ancient Kuraji Ripper. I will show you some sims in a bit. Next one, we can also get this weapon. This weapon is, however, you can only get this if you do the Scepter quest, like this really long quest chain, which can give you this weapon, which pretty much looks like melee death. It's a bit faster, however, but yeah, not really realistic. You can get this mace in AQ as well. And then we have some other weapons like Brutality Blade, Sand Polished Hammer, Whiskag. But yeah, nothing really too crazy. Let me actually show you now what I mean by doing the sims. So right now I have like the simulation set up. I have like everything best in slot besides like the weapons. So we can do actually some simulations about the weapons, which is like only pretty much relevant for humans. So that's why I wanted to show you why chromatically tempered swords actually better. So let me switch over. I have Grand Marshal's Longsword. We can test this first. Swift Blade. So yeah, we will test this. If you want to know which settings I'm using like a pretty long fight, 60 to 120 seconds. So like 1 minute to 2 minute fight actually. All of the buffs pretty much besides DMF. None of the hit buffs. And yeah. Other than that, it's pretty much normal stuff. So we have that for Grand Marshal's Longsword and Swift Blade. Now let's see what we would do with Empyrean Demolisher. And let's see what is the other weapon we can use. Chromatically tempered sword. So let's see, we only do PvE and are lucky. Yeah, you can see we do more DPS actually than the rank 14 weapons, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, this weapon is just so insane. Other than that, we can look at some other stuff as well. So yeah, now let's say we are using kind of a normal set. So this one would be the set we would use, which was the best in slot set we would have used in Blackwing Lair actually, like the previous phase, best in slot. When you didn't do any PvP ranking. So yeah, 1454. Now let's see if I would replace chromatically tempered sword with the new weapon, which we got, with this, which is Kuraji something. This one. No. I'm stupid. Kuraji Ripper, and let's still use Melee Death on this slot, so we have the same thing. But yeah, now we use the Ancient Kuraji Ripper on our main head, and we can see it is slightly less DPS. So even though it's a newer weapon, actually, it is, yeah, doing less DPS. Maybe you would say, okay, it does more damage and so on, slower weapon, but yeah, the stats you get from that is actually very insane. However, what we can test with is what would happen if we would not use kings. So now it becomes maybe more interesting. So 1385 versus yeah, it's still like 1-2 DPS better. But yeah, you can see chromatic tempered sword is a bit better, which is kind of interesting to be honest. I really want to get this weapon. I don't have it on my warrior yet, but yeah, this is like one item I'm currently chasing for. Maybe it drops tomorrow. Who knows? That's when I will do another Black Miller. But yeah, that's pretty much that for our mainhead weapons. I just wanted to show you some simulations so you can actually see these weapons actually slightly better than this one, which is pretty interesting. This was one thing I was kind of surprised by. For orcs. Orcs, yeah. Who cares about orcs? I talked so much about humans. No, I'm serious now. Orcs are kind of screwed again because axes, we don't really have any like insanely strong axe in AQ, which is kind of sad, to be honest. So we still use the rank 14 one in our main hand and in our offhand I showed you, which I will get into, but yeah. So offhand, the best one is the rank 14 one. We can use also the Blessed Kiraji War Axe, which is pretty easy to get. Or we can use things like Deathbringer, which is also still pretty good axe actually. But there we have the Nefarian one, which is slightly worse. Even on orcs, you will see Empyrean Demolisher mentioned here, because the proc is just way too strong. So yeah, that's another thing which is mentioned. Even though there's no way to get any mace weapon skill, there's like one weapon, but it only gives you +4, which is not enough. So yeah. Offhand weapons. So for humans, best one, Grandmaster Swiftblaze, pretty much has the best stats, plus it's very fast and so on. So yeah, pretty much perfect. We have again CTS, Meledev. Yeah, it's also very, very good. I have it luckily, so that's one weapon I have, which is pretty nice. Yeah, Ancient Courage Rippers mentioned here, Brutality Blade. One new thing is this mace, which is pretty interesting. Anubis Warhammer. 1.8 speed, so very fast, 7 stamina, +4 maces, and 32 attack power. So there is not a lot of things which can give you maces plus like weapon skill in maces. This one is like one thing, which I also like talked about a bit earlier. But I would suggest giving this one maybe to your tanks first, because it is very fast. It has some stamina. It has weapon skill, which is like more useful actually for tanks, and of course, yeah, it has some attack power, but would be better to use it on a tank actually, to be honest. Other than that, we have some like new hammers we can get, but yeah, these are kinda not really interesting to talk about, to be honest. Orcs for our offhand, we use Cruel Shorok. I talked about this as well. Drops from Nefarian. Or the Blessed Kiraji War Axe, again, same thing. Like I said, there are not really a lot of good axes in the game. Also, AQ didn't really change that. So, yeah, unless you want to consider this one, maybe. Yeah. But other than that, not really. Next one, we have ranged weapons. So, for our ranged weapons, the best one, again, is the Lava of the Great Worm. I talked about this. This one is new, drops from Oro. 1% crit, 18 attack power. Other one, which we can also talk about, is this one. The Crossbow of what's this name? These names, Imminent Doom. 5 strength, 7 agility, 5 stamina, 1% hit. It's actually a pretty good crossbow. Like, the stats are very nice. Roughly, just if we would consider the attack power we would get from this as a warrior, just from the stats alone, without things like kings and the Zanala world buff, we would get 10 attack power from the strength alone, and then another 7 from the agility. We would set up at 17 attack power, which is pretty close to Striker's Mark, which is also mentioned here. However, with kings and with the Zanala buff, this also increases by a bit. So yeah, that's why it's like a bit above Striker's Mark. But these are very similar to each other. But yeah, if you couldn't get Striker's Mark, try to get this. This one drops in AQ 20. So it's actually a very nice bow. If you couldn't get Striker's Mark. But yeah, that's pretty much that. Now you would maybe ask yourself, okay, where is the Edgemasters gear? So for people who aren't human or orcs, is like, what would you use actually? You can see this here. All other races for an initiation increase the weapon skill will have to use Edgemasters and blah blah. So yeah, use Edgemasters, of course. That's one thing. You want to aim to leftover weapons in low demand for your raid faction, i.e. access and so on, blah blah. The thing is, if you are playing in race which isn't in human and orc, and you have Edgemasters, of course, you will actually have more freedom of picking your weapons you can use, because Edgemasters gives you axes, daggers, and swords, so you can use all three. So what I would recommend is you should go, depending on your faction, for things that are not really needed. For example, if you play on Alliance, which I do, we have some axes which no one really wants because no one can actually use them. But if you have someone with Edgemasters, you can easily give it to them instead. So things like cool courage, cool show off, or whatever. Yeah, no one would like, no human and so on would use it, but you could give it to someone with Edgemasters. Yeah, why not? Same thing with things like Deathbringer. Sorry, things like Deathbringer. It's another story. But yeah, same thing for Horde. So let's say on Horde, CTS drops. No, on Horde, most warriors are probably orcs. Or maybe trolls. But yeah, but if you're an orc, you're not going to use CTS. You're going to use axes. So you would give it to a troll, which has Edgemasters. Because again, people with Edgemasters have more variety, which can then use weapons. It would be, in my opinion, kinda griefing giving a weapon. Let's say you have a gnome or you have a dwarf alliance, and you give them CTS over a human warrior. All of this is, of course, saying like the human warrior is not completely useless and not really like a decent player. So I'm not really going to say, okay, you need to give it to a human even though he's playing bad or trolling or kind of an AFK or whatever, or not really a good player. So let's say you have one maybe dwarf warrior which is very, very good. He does like everything, gets all the consumes world buff, and then you have a human warrior which does like nothing, no world buffs, nothing. Then of course you wouldn't give CTS to that human, because why would you? But if they would be like at the same, yeah, similar to each other or something, you of course wouldn't, or like if they're just a decent player, you wouldn't really give the dwarf CTS first and not the human. Because that's kind of grief, let's be honest. Same thing with Horde. Like if you have an orc and you have a troll, you wouldn't really give the troll access prio compared to the troll. No, you would get like opposite. You wouldn't give the troll like prio over the orc with the access, which is a thing that is mentioned here. Another thing which is also mentioned, which I didn't talk about, if you don't have Edgemasters and you can't get them and you are playing another race, not a human, not an orc, you can also go for daggers. You can pick up H-Core leather gloves or you can pick up Magar's belt. But you need to consider, you need to remember, you will be kind of screwed if you damage compared to using Edgemasters. Especially in cleave and things like whirlwind situations, because it will heavily hamper your cleave on whirlwind damage. Because like whirlwind, as you can see, does weapon damage. So yeah, for AoE stuff, it is using a dagger for that is pretty ass. So that is kind of annoying. However, of course, you have a faster weapon, you can spam more heroic strikes, but still would be something, it is pretty much inferior to instead of Edgemasters. Not playing in human or not playing in orc is pretty expensive. So yeah, you really need Edgemasters. It's really important. It's that important that actually you don't use Gauntlets of Annihilation, even though they are very, very strong, and use Edgemasters still, because yeah, the weapon skill is that valuable. That's pretty much for that. So don't try to be a bit smart about how you actually give out your gear. Yeah, you need to make some considerations, of course. So that's pretty much it for the gear and loot. I think this was pretty interesting to talk about. We are not in a queue yet. It will take maybe like another week, depending on how many people are doing the war effort and such. But yeah, soon we will be in AQ and we will maybe get some of this gear. I hope you get lucky and actually can get some of the gear as well. But yeah, if you have any questions or so, feel free to ask them, or anything else to say, feel free to do it. If you like these kinds of videos where I go over gear and such, and other classic related topics, feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next video. Have a great day. Goodbye.